NAR is NAR's biggest enemy. The agent is the greatest enemy of the agent. We can blame the attorneys in the class action suit, and by all means, they deserve some blame, not exactly, out to save the world. We can blame the Department of Justice. We can blame bad agents. But the fact of the matter is, the consumer that is frustrated that agents are overpaid and underdeliver is usually right. There has never been a greater opportunity to get a potential consumer to sit and listen to how you are uniquely valuable compared to other options.
Hello, and welcome to Keeping It Real, the podcast where we talk to the most interesting people in real estate, and we've got a regular for you today. In fact, we're going to dispense with a lot of the normal intro. You already know that this podcast is brought to you by Real Geeks, and that we'll talk about them more later. But we're just going to dive right into it. Todd, if for some reason there's like one person out there that's catching this and hasn't heard of you, do you want to just give us a quick intro, and then we're just going to go right into the topic that everyone wants to know about and is digesting, which is the NAR settlement. So.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a quick one, and then we can fly. Yeah, I'm Todd Tramonte, broker, team leader, Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, office in Fort Worth, office in Richardson, Texas, and we coach and consult and host events and probably care and think about the industry as a whole more than the typical agent, just because we have a sickness, which is also a desire to change things and try to move the real estate industry a little bit more in the direction of being professional and away from sucking, which has kind of been the history. So I've been doing this 20 plus years, have sort of navigated my way towards a role where on our team and our coaching company and beyond, I tend to be in that lead and guidance and teaching and coaching role all day, every day. And I love it. And this is a very interesting time for somebody in that kind of role. So here we go.
Todd, like many of you, was clearly uptaking the information coming out around the settlement, and had so much to say that there's like a full digital download that we are going to be referencing a lot. And so just right now, you probably should go down into the description section and go grab that download. So as we're referencing things, you'll see what we're talking about. But, Todd, maybe you can just start us off with your 30-second elevator pitch. Like, where are we? What did this thing just do?
Well, we're in a state of panic if we are the industry, okay? Mm-hmm. But we don't need to be in a state of panic. We definitely should be alert. We should be heads up, because clearly change is afoot. And there are people out there talking about, well, nothing's really going to change. And there are others that are hairs on fire. It's definitely somewhere in between the two. I don't know that it's dead center, but the truth is somewhere in the middle. I believe that our industry is really bad. I really believe that. Like on the average, real estate agents.
Did we catch you on a bad day, Todd? Like,
no.
Did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed?
No, as long as you've known me, I've felt this way. The reality is most real estate agents aren't great at their job, and most of us know that. There's a lot of part-time, winging it, well-intentioned, nice people that just aren't that great, right? That's why the consumer thinks most agents suck, because they do. Now, I'm not pointing at any person or any brokerage or any idea, but as a whole, that's why it's easy for people to be mad at real estate agents. That's why it's easy to pony up and go sue the whole industry and somehow win. So that's where we are, in my opinion, is we're at a crossroads where the industry has allowed itself to be attacked or to be accused, and has come up the loser in one way. What I would prefer to spend my energy on is where we, you and me and whoever's listening and talking and looking to grow and benefit, can in fact benefit. So the title of that document, if you haven't gone to grab it yet, I'll just read it word for word to make sure. It's how NAR just locked in higher compensation for high value agents. I've spent my entire career trying to figure out how to be and then how to help other people become high value agents, which means we bring a ton of value to the table instead of asking our friends and family and neighbors to do us a favor or throw us a bone and use us as their agent, which is by almost definition admitting that we don't bring a lot of value. Hey, let me be your agent. Put me on the contract. So The changes might help us move towards professionalism, most likely on a whole, probably not, but it provides an opportunity, I think, for a lot of us, not just broadly, some very specific opportunities to actually earn a greater income, have more impact, and I think probably enjoy our work a lot more.
So we're going to talk a lot about, the effect that you're talking about. Like, hey, there's an opportunity to make a lot more money, right? And I love the hot takes that we're getting. We're talking to a whole bunch of people about this across the spectrum, from new agents, established agents. Obviously you've been around coaching forever. I'm curious from your perspective, when you think about, I think a lot about these things as like inputs and outputs, right? What are the major factors, most significant changes that this settlement talks about that's going to lead to the effects that you're going to talk about downstream here?
Yeah. So, I mean, if we really boiled it down to a few bullet points, which it's more complex than that, but okay. So we can't offer buyer agent compensation inside the MLS anymore. Okay. What's that going to lead to? That's going to lead to a massive communication burden, at least for a little while. With that burden, I think will come a lot of opportunities, but let's acknowledge that it's going to be annoying. Okay. That's just honesty. Number two, the NAR is going to write a check or 4 checks over 4 years, maybe, if this gets approved, for a ton of money, 400 plus million. Okay, so that's another.
But substantially less money than was originally on the table.
Oh, and if we had time, everyone likes to complain about NAR, and boy, do I like to. But I will say, once you've lost the battle, they might win the war with some of the ways this settlement could protect us going forward. So some credit may be due, but we'll determine that later. And then the last one that's a major bullet point here is, if you're going to work with a buyer, you should actually have them hire you. I mean, mind-blowing stuff here, but if you're going to represent a buyer, they should actually document that they want to hire you. Now, at our team, we've been doing that for like 18 years. And maybe Texas has done a better job of asking us to use that document. I know most agents here still don't, but we always have. So we feel like we're way out ahead of that. I've been training agents in our coaching group. Have been doing that for years. And the last few weeks have been saying, thank you, that this is just an absolute standard. But the main bullet points are those. There's some nuance to it, and some potential maybe effects, but that's really the gist of it. So it's going to lead to some communication frustration. We're going to need some new systems for how we document and communicate compensation. And then we're going to need to communicate our value and actually get hired before we go work. Not the worst thing.
Not the worst thing. No. And I think matches what happens in other industries, right? So referencing the document, in the beginning of the document, you actually talk a lot about your personal journey. And so, maybe we can touch on some of the key points there and why you included that section. But, also I'm curious, basically, if you were to repeat that journey, post settlement, like if you were pushing reset on your entire career, or starting as a new agent today, what would be different?
Yeah, well, I can tell you very quickly what would be different is I wouldn't be so dang prideful in the beginning. First of all, I was broke, so it was easy to be prideful because I couldn't afford to go do much else. But the pride got in my way of learning. The pride got in my way of, working with other people, however you want to define that, whether that be on a team or a brokerage or masterminding or coaching or whatever. I was trying to figure it out completely on my own. A, I was embarrassed of how little I knew. B, I couldn't afford a lot of help. And C, I was just purely ignorant, not stupid, but ignorant. I just didn't know. And because I was so prideful, I didn't plug in with others and I didn't see a better way. And if you knew my whole story, this would make sense that I owned a discount brokerage for a while. The desire never really changed to add more value and actually be impactful in people's lives. But the route I went early was just charge less and do the same. The pendulum has swung the other way to do way more and a lot of times charge more.
We should probably highlight this real fast from your, you owned a discount brokerage, right? And you're not saying, oh yeah, I got the playbook, we're back, baby. You're saying, no, that playbook's dead. That's not what we're doing.
Yeah, what I'm saying is the people I worked with then were wonderful people, but the model really is not the best model for the kind of consumer and client that I feel gifted, called, desiring to serve, right? Which is somebody that wants expertise, that wants a world-class outcome, but doesn't want to sit up at night watching HGTV learning how to keep their eye on their agent, right? When you hire an attorney, you want them to go handle it. The kind of client I want is the kind of client that wants the real estate professional to just handle it, not just be their agent on a deal, but to be their real estate pro forever. Like that, you're my guy, you're my girl, you always will be. So that being said, yeah, I don't regret those years, but if I were rewriting the story, I'd probably skip them and I would get right to how can I deliver legitimately the most value possible to the client? And then let me reverse engineer how to make my business profitable. How do I need to staff that? What technology do I need to deliver that? And do I want to deliver that? On my worst days, I answer my phone, Bob's Muffler Shop. Those are the days you're like, man, it might be easier just to sell mufflers. I'm sure I could overcomplicate that business too. But my point in that is if I were rewriting it, I'd like to skip the years where I had the same goal, but the way I fleshed it out was with a low fee and a real low delivery of value.
Right. So I think that was, formative because, you've talked a lot about, you call it like the commoditization of man.
Yeah.
And so we probably should do a little plug-in spiel on that just to level set. I think for me, that rings true, coming from a marketing background and thinking about, differentiation being a key element of, proving value and your ability to charge more. So maybe you can just take that for a few minutes and then we can build on it from there.
Yeah. To give you the 100-mile-an-hour version of what that document is, years ago, I think I wrote it in 2011. It's in the document. Yeah. And I wrote it very deliberately, almost kind of mockingly as like an academic white paper. And so I labeled it the commoditization of man. But the whole point was to communicate, like, quit acting like everybody else, right? And so this is when I had begun coaching and I was trying to kind of communicate my way of thinking and my philosophy to my own team, but also our coaching clients and potential mastermind members and things like that. And so really what the document talks about is how the world wants to commoditize you, but it can't. You are a human being, an individual, and what we sell in our business is not houses. We don't sell products. We sell professional services. You've made your sale for the most part when you've earned the trust and been hired by a seller or a buyer or investor, whatever you want to call it. So the report talks about what is a commodity. Well, examples of a commodity would be gold or tin or copper, something that is generally the same wherever you get it, and its value is set by an open market. And so if I bought an ounce of gold in Tahiti or an ounce of gold in Mexico or an ounce of gold in Kansas, it's basically the same price per ounce. The market
buzzword you might hear is fungible, right? As in, like, you can swap one for another and it makes no difference. If I have one quarter, it's the same as the other quarter. There's no uniqueness between them.
Exactly. And our industry has enabled the consumer to think of us that way. Well, all agents do the same thing, charge the same thing, look and act the same way. Therefore, it doesn't really matter who I use. Sadly, though, and there's other parts of the document that talk somewhat energetically about this, that most consumers think, yeah, they all do the same, charge the same. They do very little. They charge a lot, and they're a necessary evil, or maybe even an unnecessary evil. And so that's this. By the way, I wrote this in 2011. This is before the current lawsuits and all this, and before the media absolute obliteration of the truth, which has come out lately. So this is not a new thought. By the way, in that report, I talk about how you can knock on a door in almost any city in America and say, hey, what do realtors charge? And they're going to give you a number, and 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10 houses are going to say the same number. So we have had a problem in our business. I don't know that there's any underhanded orchestrated price fixing, but there's just kind of this, everyone acts the same and does the same, and there's not a lot of critical thinking about differentiation or how could I outperform the market. And if you look at other professionals, other industries with licenses and at least somewhat similar setups, there's massive differentiation. A world-class attorney might charge $1,000 an hour, and a brand new attorney might struggle to get any clients at $50 an hour. And we all know that. We know that a CPA has a different hourly rate. A general practice doctor probably doesn't charge the same as a world-class specialized surgeon. But our industry, brand new agents, old agents, commercial is a little different. Residential, condo, townhome, in town, out of town, big lot, small lot. Everyone just assumes everyone charges the same. And sadly, when I say everyone, that includes agents, because there's so many. So anyway, that report is just about the fact that the consumer thinks of us that way. And sadly, a lot of us think of us that way. And that is the wrong way to think.
Right. And I think we should just like keep hammering on this because, for anyone that's taken like a business 101 class or an econ 101 class, it's like you'll read in the first couple pages of that textbook, there is a gravitational pull, a downhill ski slope, like whatever you want to call it, towards commoditization. Like markets want to take things that are dissimilar and competitive and they want to boil them down to their bases so that they can be like, quote, efficiently traded. And I really like the analogy that you gave there of the doctors, right? You don't want to be the general practitioner that could be swapped out. You want to be the specialist that has got a very specific specialty that when people go to, they know that you are going to make a difference for them.
Yeah. And look, no disrespect to someone who is and naturally feels called and gifted to be a general practitioner. You just know, okay, I'm accepting a little bit more of a commoditized. My rates are a little bit less flexible. I don't have that price elasticity that others might have. And if I go away, someone will replace me, right? You're competing on relationship and bedside manner, not really results, because most people can prescribe the same penicillin or Z-Pak or, whatever it is. I'm not a doctor, obviously. But the point is, we just have such an incredible ability to provide uniquely different value. But that, I think, is part of the big problem, is that most agents don't know that or believe that or haven't even begun to have the conversation to think about that. And that's a sad state of our industry.
Right. So it sounds like, okay, we've honing in here on the real problem of like lack of differentiation, of like people that are allowing the commoditization to happen. So what's the antidote here? Like, and how are you coaching your agents to start having these conversations? And there's probably a couple different places that we need to attack this. It's like, okay, there's buyer agreements, there's like compensation itself and there's probably different flavors of this that you know way better than me. So, start breaking this down. As is
often the case, every bullet point of our discussion, we could spend 2 weeks on.
Yeah, exactly.
But
that's why you're on here so frequently.
Well, and I enjoy it. So let's start with what is the problem. I mean, different people might answer this question differently, but for the sake of the conversation and for the document that I obsessively stayed up too late one night and wrote 44 pages of, which turned into what you have if you downloaded it. In that document, I communicate to the reader that the greatest problem the residential real estate industry has is the residential real estate industry. NAR is NAR's biggest enemy. The agent is the greatest enemy of the agent. We can blame the attorneys in the class action suit, and by all means, they deserve some blame. Not exactly, out to save the world. We can blame the Department of Justice. We can blame bad agents. But the fact of the matter is, the consumer that is frustrated that agents are overpaid and underdeliver is usually right. That's the problem. The problem is most people in our industry are not running a business, are not committed to delivering world-class value, are not really working full-time to get better and better and better. Now, I'm not talking about everybody. So if you are doing those things, then I'm not talking about you. But the reality is the barrier to entry of our industry is very, very low. And the bar of sustained success is actually very, very high. But the consumer doesn't know that, because as people fail, they are replaced by more people. Because the messaging, and feel free to blame our industry for a lot of this, is flexibility, big income, a lot of freedom, work with your friends and family. I've written books on this. The 5 Lies, talks about some of that stuff. So all that to say, the problem of our industry is our industry. Now, I'd like to go change what President Biden is saying in the media and what the newspapers are saying and the radio shows and television shows and, who the PR representatives of NAR and my state association are. But look, we could solve all of that. The fact is, if someone wants to sell their house and they go talk to 5 agents to do it, 4, if not 5 of those agents are going to terribly represent our industry. So really, our industry is more that than this, which is people committed to getting better. So we just have to acknowledge that and not get angry at people who think that way about our industry, and acknowledge that a lot of times when they think poorly of our industry, they're right to do so. But here's the good news. The fact that a lot of our industry is pretty bad gives us a massive opportunity to differentiate and be set apart from the rest of the industry, our so-called competition. So if you bring value and you can communicate it effectively, the opportunity is massive. And guess what? The way I see it, there has never been a greater opportunity to get a potential consumer to sit and listen to how you are uniquely valuable compared to other options. So I think that's kind of the foundation of where we build up from and go, hey, this could be pretty great.
I would love to drill into this a little bit more, right? So, for viewers out there, you're going to need to go hit that subscribe button because we have a whole series of episodes coming. We just recorded a huge batch live in person in Austin, all great conversations from many different perspectives. And we talked to Teresa Bastian again, and she had very similar things to say, like, hey, maybe the entry level is a little bit too, or the barrier to entry is a little bit too low. People aren't thinking about their business the right way. And maybe we need to be communicating our value a little bit more. Right. So for the back of the class that's back there and they poke their head up and like, okay, like I need to be communicating my value. Those are great words. How do you give these people some specifics on how they implement this?
Yeah. By the way, love Teresa. She's been in our mastermind for years and she's very good at this. So for the person that really hasn't been locked in on this topic and is now realizing, oh boy, I am going to have to communicate my value to buyers so that they will actually sign a rep agreement. Oh boy. On the listing side, there's going to be a lot more questions about commission and compensation. I'm going to have better answers. Here's the good news. If you are willing, you may not have ever done this before, but if you are willing to truly pursue mastery of two things, I think you're going to do better than you've ever done. Number one, master adding value for your clients. And that means this Kaizen process of constant improvement and process improvement. And hey, what we did yesterday may not be what we do tomorrow. How do we improve our systems? What do we take away? What do we add? If you're willing to do that, hyper focused on value to your buyer, value to your seller, value to your renter, value to your investor, whoever your ideal client is, that's one part of what is going to create a massive opportunity for you going forward. Number two is how you communicate that. But let's go back to, I think what you want to get into is, okay, technically speaking, what would I actually do?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because you says Kaizen, you make me think about like Demming and manufacturing and an important thing to think about, if you think about the way an economy operates and a manufacturing process operates, is you take raw ingredients that have a certain amount of value and you process them and things come out of the factory on the other end. But the value of that thing is not just the sum of its parts. You could have 10 $1 parts,
right, and have $1 million product come out the other end because of the value of it, not the cost of the assembly of it.
Right, exactly. The BOM cost of an iPhone is not $1,000. It's probably $200, right? And they're charging $1,000. So we could probably brainstorm some examples, of like what is creating that value in a real estate transaction. Is it you are a master of this transaction and everything is smooth and the person does not, even need to think about, what's happening? Like what are some of the things that come to mind for you that are making that customer say, you know what, I got my money's worth?
Yeah, let me give you an annoying answer and then I'll give you a happy one. The annoying answer is different consumers want different things. So if you're not willing to actually pay attention to who am I trying to work with, if you are willing to get away from I will do anything for anyone, which means you're not excellent for anyone, then you can succeed more in the future than in the past, or at least sustain whatever success you've had and not lose ground. Now, assuming some archetype, some very similar client type, at the end of the day, if you can put more money in a seller's pocket, then you are worth more to them. Now, there's a lot of ways to do that. Some of these simple, obvious, not super differentiated ones are staging and better photography, negotiation, communication, availability, access, staff help, technology, a clearly differentiated, unique selling proposition or marketing and selling offer. The ability to get more eyeballs on a property, to get more foot traffic in a property, to get more offers, to get more competitive offers, cleaner offers, less liability for your seller. These sound obvious, but there's a lot of people that aren't doing that. They're just sort of taking what the MLS got them, taking what the market is driving. If there's scarcity naturally in the market, then they have it. If it's not naturally in the market, then they don't have it. Well, what if you had systems to create scarcity, to create urgency? This is what we coach on. And by the way, over the years, 50% or more of what we coach on, I've shared for free on Keeping It Real episodes. So, go track it down. At this point, you would join coaching because you want us to walk, you want to run with us to do that. But that's fine. We love doing it.
Well, plug for upcoming episode. I mean, we're talking about a couple things, and I think you're going to keep drilling into the scarcity thing, which Teresa also talks about. So subscribe for that. And then we talked to Dr. Benjamin Ritter, who's outside the real estate industry, but is a leadership and professional development coach. And there was a great segment in there where he's like, look, coaching, we could talk about this all on a podcast, but really a coach's job is to call you on your bullshit, and hold your feet to the fire.
Yeah. I think, different people are motivated by different things. Different consumers would understand and experience value in different ways. So one of the best ways you can begin to add more value is to focus on a certain consumer type, not discriminate. Not in a discrimination type of way, but to say, look, residential only or townhomes only. And I'm just going to get better and better and better at that. This price point, this geography, whatever it is. The fact is, if you can become world class at that, you are much more likely to put more money in that seller's pocket, to have them sleep better during the transaction, to have them enjoy it, to have them get not just financial benefit, but lifestyle benefit, social benefit, maybe even some sort of impact, like community impact, ministry impact, something like that. And then on the buy side, flip it. Less money out of pocket, more reward, more ROI, easier process, more flexibility, access to more potential properties online and offline, on market and off market. More help than just one person, the ability to see properties when more than one person has scheduling availability, to have, relational expertise, technological expertise, negotiation, transactional, to have access to higher quality, more options with vendor partners. And, I could go on and on and on forever, but there's a lot of specifics there that if you're not writing them down, you could. And if that sounds like something you're already doing, maybe you need to work more on the communication of your value. Or maybe you need to think more critically about, I'm doing those things, but I don't know that they're producing a much different result. So I need to do them differently or do them better or use them better or find better people to do, This doesn't have to be rocket science. There is some uniqueness and cleverness to this, but a lot of times it's execution more than idea.
Todd, have you ever seen Dr. Strangelove?
I have.
I know this is a weird segue, but it's whenever people talk about communication in the marketing space, like I always think of the scene where there's a conversation between Russian ambassador and the generals and the president of the United States, and they're basically saying, like, what's the point of having a doomsday machine if you don't tell anyone about it, right? Like, you could be the best realtor on the planet, and if you don't tell anyone about it, like, what's the point?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people's reluctance on that is, I don't want to sound like a jerk. I don't want to sound like an egomaniac. And there are great ways to communicate your value and your uniqueness without being a tool.
Absolutely. So let's not post on social media about the yacht that you bought with all of your commissions. Let's focus on the great things that you did for your clients.
And let's not brag about all of our bogus trophies because the consumer doesn't care or know what that means. But let's make the consumer the hero of the story. It'll be very clear that we were part of the story, that we were associated with the story. But let's talk about what an incredible lifestyle benefit. And you and I have talked about this a lot, so I won't spend much time. But a lot of agents are too focused on features. I can get you this, and this. I can show you. And then some of us spend a little bit too much time on benefits. Now, benefits are better than features. But there's a whole nother level to aspire to, which is that transformational value, right? So there's features of what you can do for me. Then there's the benefits of what you can do for me, which that's a massive improvement. And then there's, how does that actually transform my life? How do I live differently? How do I never look back? How am I, better off for the rest of my life because of this? And if you can work your way up that ladder from features to benefits to transformation, that's when you'll be uniquely differentiated, because everyone has access to the MLS, at least for now. Everyone can get the door open. Everyone can use the state regulated contracts, but you might do a lot of those things better. So what are the benefits, not of those things, but of how you deliver those things? And then how could you completely change someone's life with how you uniquely do that? Protect them from a big negative. Some people are motivated by that, or create this massive positive that they could never have done without you. A lot of people are motivated by that. By the way, slightly more are motivated away from the negative than towards the positive. So our scripting, our consultations, our presentations do both and talk about protecting you from the worst mistakes and the biggest pitfalls, but also creating and providing for you the greatest opportunities and unique access and things like that. So these are some of the ways, I'm trying to answer your question tactfully and with technique. These are some of the ways you can add more value to your client. You can also not work completely alone. Nothing wrong with being a solo agent, but you still need some help, some vendors, some partners, whatever, so that your client gets more than just the sum total of your 1 or 2 areas of expertise and then 37 areas of decent competency.
There's a very simple thing. I think in market research, we call this like a means chain analysis, but you don't need any fancy words. Basically, you ask people, hey, what did you like? And they're going to say something, sort of simple, right? And you just keep asking why until you get to that thing that's like, hey, what did you like? Well, the transaction was really simple and seamless. Well, why? And then it's like, you get that like 3 or 4 times, and then you're going to get to the, oh man, it's like, it was actually really great because I just accomplished my life goal of blah, 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 right? And now you have something that like, if you can jump your communication to, I'm going to help you, boom, that bigger thing, you have something that's going to be a lot more impactful.
Yes. So to everybody watching and listening, take what Chris just said, and that's how you should get your reviews written and videoed. Instead of being like, Chris was great, love him, you should use him. Chris facilitated me achieving a lifelong goal. I'll never be the same. My kids will never be the same. We've completely changed generations of our family. And I know how crazy that sounds, but that's the kind of purchase and sale experience we just had. And it was never would have happened without him. That is a very different review than Chris is great. You should use him. We love him.
Exactly. You keep asking why until they get a little teary and they give you the real answer.
Yeah, we call that the ultimate scenario or the 5, 6, 7 or the core motivation. And you can use it in lots of different avenues. What's important to you about buying this house? What's important to you about selling this house? We use it in interviews. What's important about getting into the real estate business? Why, what would it, imagine in your mind that you don't end up on our team. What does that look like to you? How does that feel? And then you get 6, 7 layers deep and you start getting that teary-eyed emotion. I've never thought of this before, but that would be really meaningful. That would totally change my life. That's that transformational value that we were talking about.
Why do you do it? Real estate is hard work, and if you want to be successful in this industry, you need to know exactly what you are working toward. Once you know that, we can help. Real Geeks is built for agents driven to succeed. We help agents separate themselves from the crowd of mid-tier agents and set a course for greatness. If you know why you grind, we can help you multiply your results. Give us a call.
I mean, let's zoom back up to maybe like the tabloid, like headline level of this thing. And, I'll ask you the question like, okay, NAR settlement, like who's this going to hit the hardest?
Well, it's funny. I might surprise you answer. As it sits, it's actually going to hurt home buyers the most, I think. 1A is probably cruddy agents. And all due respect to everybody, if you're just bad at your job and you're not trying to get better, then you should have already, I'm not upset that you'll be out of the industry. I don't wish you harm, but I don't think you should be representing people in huge transactions that have monumental implications. You should go do something else. Now, if you're working hard and you're fully committed and you've just been struggling, that's a different group I'm talking to there. But I think it's going to, as it sits, it's going to really, really harm home buyers who are not fully understanding what's going on. I think it's going to harm bad agents. I think it's going to harm lazy leaders.
I'm curious why sorry to cut you off there. I'm curious why you think it's going to impact home buyers. Like, I guess maybe just differential, I kind of looked at this and thought, okay, maybe this is going to actually help home buyers because they will at least have to be walked through what's about to happen. And it's sort of like in a similar way to, hey, this is exactly what you're going to be paying on the, in the closing documentation.
Yeah. I mean, in that way, I think buyers should benefit. I think so many agents will be so poor with that documentation, like they have always been with required disclosures, like they've even been with listing agreements, like they've been with required brokerage disclosures and all sorts of things. Again, I'm not a hateful, angry, mean person. I just know statistically that most agents aren't very good, and that's what we're up against. Now, the reason I think buyers will be hurt is because there will be a default assumption that I've got to pay my own agent, and I'm either not going to do it, so I'm on my own, or I'm going to skimp, so I've got a pretty cruddy agent. or I've got someone that's got to do a ton of volume so they can't really advocate for me, or I simply don't have the money to buy now because I don't want to do it alone and I don't have the cash. Now, I think some of that over time might get solved for through the financing window and through VA and things like that. But as it stands, the stated solution is going to create more problems than it's going to ever solve. So assuming some of those things get sorted out, obviously this has a significant negative impact on lazy onesie twosie agents that mostly only work with buyers. There's a lot of brokerages that haven't fully thought through the fact that they are almost entirely funded by that type of agent and that type of client. There's a lot of team leaders that have low-level training and they're running a numbers game sweatshop of hammering leads that don't offer a lot of differentiation and unique value, which again provides a ton of opportunity for folks that will do those things. But I think there's going to be a real reckoning, not to mention the value gap that it could create. And I'll oversimplify this by saying, assume you have a seller and a buyer, and everyone's assuming that this new settlement means people aren't going to pay the same commissions. So you have a seller that says, nope, I'm not compensating a buyer's agent, but I'm also not dropping my price. And you have a buyer that says, if I have to compensate my own agent, I need a lower price. There's 1,000 ways we could talk about how we bridge that gap, but how many sellers do you know that are like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'll just drop my price because I don't have to pay the agent? Well, what's the difference in it? If they think that, they're going to offer compensation. But if they're looking to make that gap up, so is the buyer. And now we have a bigger gap. We either have stagnation in the marketplace, we lose value because of that, we lose demand because of that, or some combination of the two. So we have a mess on our hands. We will see if there's any way our industry can educate the consumer well enough and fast enough for us not to wallow in that quagmire for years at a time.
Well, and so for anyone listening, like that is probably a key thing that you should be working on right now, because it, clearly we're talking about like, hey, there's a massive gap of like, participants in the industry, like consumers, like the end users of this industry, really understanding what is going on, right? So it's obviously just an obvious way that you could get an early lead on this situation by really mastering. And I maybe would go beyond saying, because I think a lot of people are using like sales language on saying like, oh, I need to work on my listings presentation, or I need to go on, whatever. Like maybe you should think about it like an elementary school teacher. Like, how do I explain to someone that doesn't know anything about this, like how this whole thing operates, so that at least they walk away from the conversation with you going, hey, I know something now.
Yep. And I would argue just lay that commoditization idea on top of that, right? How do I speak so a third grader understands me and gets really excited, not just taps out and is like, all right, fine, I'll sign. But like, oh, sweet. I wish my previous agent would have done this. I'm thrilled to sign that I want that type of advocacy. I'm thrilled to understand fiduciary the way you just explained it. I'm thrilled to get access to these resources and have exclusivity and not be absolutely brutalized by this other agent on the other side. Also, as an agent, hopefully you're hearing what Chris is saying and what I'm expanding on as an opportunity. Yes, there's a burden of adjustment and flexibility and learning and mastery, but with that comes huge opportunity. One of the other pages in the report, I talk about this idea of what I call the remnant, which is if 95% of consumers ran towards whatever fear realtors have of the worst case. Everybody's now hiring buyer's agents for like $100 just to open doors, or Zillow takes over the world, or Open Door wins the fight, whatever. If 95% of the consumers go that way, and let's just say 95% of the agents mindlessly, blindly run after them, I'm not going. I've been building a business for 20 something years now to have a dominant market presence, a dominant value proposition for the 5% remnant. And I'm just making these numbers up. I can't fathom it would ever be that extreme. But even if it was, this may not be true for everyone, but I'm in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. There's still plenty of opportunity with 5%. So I want to be the people that like, nope, I want to look someone in the eye, shake their hand, know that they know what the heck they're talking about. I don't want to have to do their job for them. I'll pay them to do it, but I want them to do it. That's who I want to be a value provider to be an advocate for, to have a long-term relationship with. And that's who I've always wanted. So in a way, this is the best market my business has ever existed in, where people are like, well, hold on, before I agree to your commission, let me know what I'm paying for, because I've heard things are changing. Great. A lot of times in the past, people are like, no, I know what you do. I have a friend, I don't want to talk. we have the best opportunity ever because people are finally going, hold on, what do you do and what do you charge? What a wonderful opportunity if you have an answer. And that's what Chris is saying. Hopefully you're working on your answer. Now, I wouldn't say we're spoiled. I would say this is one of the rare times where our hard work is really, I think, going to pay off because we've been doing this for 20 years. So our answer is, I can't wait to tell you. We've been doing this for 20 years. By the way, I would be a little bit concerned if you're the guinea pig on some other agent's first time out with a rep agreement. First time out trying to actually, do something unique and differentiated. Now, we're all going to have our competitive language, but there's a page of that document that kind of shows it's a little bit off the cuff, but what are some of the elements of the agents that would go that 95% route? And what are some of the descriptive terminology of those of us that might stick around and try to dominate that remnant?
Okay, so there's a thing that gets thrown around in the media, and I know that, I've certainly got this in text and at dinner parties since the NAR, news thing is coming out. They're like, hey, Chris, you know a little bit about real estate. I'm like, well, a little bit, I'm in this world with these guys, and they're like, what? Isn't there going to be like a massive washing out of real estate agents?
So, yeah, there's two ways to think about this. One is, if you're purely speaking from selfish motives and you're a real estate professional, great.
Because this is really what I want people to hear is that you've been talking about, hey, yeah, this is actually probably good news for the, let's call them the actual real estate professionals, the people that have been around for a long time that know what they're doing, that are going to adapt to this change, right? And I want to rewind. I've probably told this story on Keeping It Real before, but I was at, the unofficial Real Geeks user conference for the first time that I was there. We were heading into a high interest rate environment, right? It was right then, kind of party's over, interest rates are going up, things are going to get tight, and I'm walking around talking to other agents like, hey, what's going to happen? And they're like, no big deal. I survived 2008. I survived COVID. This is just another thing, another day at the office, guys. We're going to game's going to change. I'm going to adapt. And I was like, oh yeah. Okay. I got it. We got a customer base here that's got this figured out. Right.
Well, and you were at an event where the most motivated, most engaged, most growth oriented people got on an airplane to come be. So I think you were getting a sliver of the marketplace, but, without spending the rest of this episode on that, I would simply say this. You're crazy if you don't acknowledge that with change comes some difficulty. So to simply be like, no big deal, I survived 2008, I think that's a good positive attitude. It's also a little bit short-sighted. I think it's wise to say, hey, we are aware that things are changing. We are focusing on the opportunity, but we're also paying very close attention to where we might be missing something or not fully. So we're going to stay agile. We're going to stay attentive. When the announcement of the NAR settlement, which still is not finalized and approved, but when that announcement came out, there were a lot of people within minutes proclaiming their brilliance on social media and all over the place. And I'm not saying I'm better or smarter than any of them, but I took 2 or 3 days to take it in and think. And I'm still doing that. And I have one of the most important things I put in my team meeting with my team the following week and with our coaching group the following week was let's stay humble. Let's be confident, but not cocky. Let's be aware and humble, but also opportunistic. So those are the things that we want to do. We're going to be humble in that we don't know everything. We have not seen it all. I've been around for 20 something years. We have not seen, I survived 2008. We survived 2019. We survived COVID. We survived a lot of things. That doesn't mean the next thing might absolutely trip us up. So let's stay humble. Let's stay connected. The way we solve for that, by the way, is in community, whether that's your brokerage or your team or a mastermind or a coaching group or a chamber of commerce, whatever it is. But let's stay connected and use more than our own brains. But let's also prepare and educate and hustle and be confident that we can benefit from this. So it's both and, but I do think there's some real value in humility here. And there's going to be some people that came out with a brand new program within a few days of this that are like, oh, I was just flat out wrong and I look like an idiot. And I think I actually hurt a lot of people with my blind confidence. So, some of those are just values-based approaches. Others of that is from experience of going, well, be confident, be prepared, but also be humble and attentive to there's some wild cards out there. Chris, just imagine for a second that this settlement doesn't get approved.
We're back to the great unknown.
Yeah, and it comes back with, instead of 3 or 4 items, 42 items. And the DOJ piggybacks this thing and goes, right. Nope. And politics gets involved. And all of a sudden there's this totally inappropriate slant. By the way, based on what politicians are saying lately. Who knows what a political football this issue at the wrong time could be used as for votes. Both sides. I'm not blaming anyone. But I would simply say a little bit of humility goes a long way here. But at the same time, don't sit back and just wait. Educate yourself, take action, adjust, advocate for your clients, and I think people can do really well.
Have you ever seen the what happens to a stock price when a big settlement against a company comes out?
Have you seen what's happened in the publicly traded real estate assets just in the last few weeks? Yeah, it's wild. And it's not on necessarily real stuff. It's just on news and media.
Right. So I guess my point is this, pick your big company, right, that has been embroiled in some lawsuit, right? Usually when the settlement comes out, the stock price actually goes up, right? So I think if NAR was a publicly traded company and the settlement was announced, the stock price would have gone up, not just because it turns out that they're going to be paying hundreds of millions, not billions, right? And that's great, but just that there's certainty, right? Yeah. So even though, hey, new settlement, we've got to digest what all of this means, right? You had no information before, and now you have some information, right? And that should at least give you a footing to start figuring things out, right?
By the way, that's sort of the underlying victory that, if approved, this settlement would achieve for agents that a lot of people are not looking at right now. Wow, $418 million, that's crazy. It is crazy. We lost that battle. But when you think about the war, if losing this battle alleviates state by state by state, association by association by association, class action suits and singular agent and brokerage suits, for the most part, if this alleviates that, it was a bargain. And I know that sounds insane, but once you got where we got, then that becomes a really big win. And to your point, it creates some level of certainty, some level playing field, and at least we know the new rules of the new game, and then we all get back to trying to figure out how to win. By the way, winning as defined by adding value to the consumer and getting compensated well for that. And that brings us to the point that I think will be the biggest differentiator, which is how we communicate our value. And by the way, you can be a dirtbag and communicate value that you don't have. And in the game of just raw inputs and outputs, the winner is the one that communicates best, not even necessarily the one that actually adds value. So we have to do both, add value and communicate it.
Definitely. Okay, so linking together a couple of concepts that I think about, I was talking about experience earlier and, being in a room full of, kind of the best and the brightest. And, I guess maybe just to summarize my feeling on what experience is, right? Experience doesn't necessarily mean that change is going to be any less painful, but you should be able to navigate it with more efficiency than someone that's seeing a problem for the first time, right? And I think that for a lot of intelligent people, that's the other reason why they study history. Right. And you had a huge section, not huge, you had a great section, I'll phrase it that way, in your document about history. And so I'm just wondering, what gems in there are you looking at and thinking hey, this is either history repeating itself or this isn't a new plot twist or
Yeah. So really brief disclaimer, just about anything I create is for my team. And then if people that are in our coaching group are really benefiting from me treating them like a team member, even though they might be in another state or country. And then when I do things like this, it's not that I give less, it's that we have shorter snippets, but I'm basically sharing with you what I created for our team. And so in that regard, I created this history repeats itself part of the document to encourage my team that our industry has overcome massive changes, massive attacks, unbelievable disruption many times. And I am not a historian. So the truth is, I'm sure my document is highly limited in its scope, but it goes back to the 1800s. And we talk about the advent of actual organized brokerage and the unbelievable amount of crazy criminal activity that happened there, exclusivity in brokerage, buyer agency, technology. By the way, just think about this one scenario, Chris. Okay, you're an agent in the 80s. And you've had hundreds of clients over 20 years, whatever. Not one of your clients has ever known which houses are for sale without talking to you, unless they drove by a house and saw a sign in the front. They literally didn't know where the houses are that are for sale unless they came to you. And then the next day, it was all over the internet. Can you imagine surviving that kind of shift where you were like, Now, you would have been wrong to think, but you might have been acting on the assumption that your value is you had info that they didn't have. You knew where the properties were and they didn't. Now, that's actually part of our buyer initial consultation is that never should have been the unique value of a client. It should have been leadership, advocacy, negotiation, access, all these things. But for a long time, that was a massive value advantage that an agent had. I know where the houses are, and there is no other way to find out without having an agent because it's in a printed book or a dot matrix printout or a database that only we have access to. And then all of a sudden, it's on 1,000 websites, or at the time, probably more like 80 websites. But the fact is, can you imagine anything more disruptive than that? Even the advent of buyer agency probably wasn't quite that shocking to the system. Now, I give you a history of countless things that we've overcome. 2001, 9/11, 2008, stock market volatility, interest rate volatility, the savings and loan bust of the late 80s, oil and gas fluctuations, political war. I mean, our industry has weathered much bigger storms than this one. But right now, this feels like an atom bomb to a lot of people.
Absolutely. So, I mean, once again, if you didn't catch it earlier and you're just tuning in now or you skipped to this thing, like this thing is available for download down in the description, and I'll say like, producer Sean actually, I don't need an excuse to talk to you, Todd. We always have a great time. But producer Sean like brought this thing to me. He's like, hey, have you seen this part of it? Like the timeline? He's like, there's some great stuff in there. You really need to read this. And so, yeah, that really piqued our interest.
Like I said, I wrote it for my team, but I think because of that, you'd be crazy not to go devour this thing. It's free. I mean, go for it. You don't have to like all the sections the same. Obviously, I think this was Sean's favorite part. But the point I'm making is this should encourage you. The point is to go, wow, our industry has made it through all kinds of crazy stuff before NAR was even a thing. And I document in there what NAR was before it was NAR and all that. But the reality is you should be able to look at that and go, okay, it doesn't guarantee that I will be fine, but there will be a residential real estate industry beyond this. It will look different. All things are always changing and growing and learning and improving. And there are setbacks before growth and all those things. But if you're willing to put your head down and commit, and by the way, if you're watching this, I think you're probably highly likely to be okay. Doesn't guarantee you're going to go take action on it. But the fact that you're here and even attentive and wanting to probably puts you in the top 20% at least of people of odds of survival or thriving. But the point of that was not just to document the history. I then give you a little bit of interpretation. And I think in a lot of ways, that's the part that Sean reached out to me and was like, man, this is some of the best stuff I've seen out of you. And again, in our coaching group and on our team, we're talking for days and days and hours on this, but I've given you the most distilled summary I possibly can of what that history means for our future.
Okay. I want to do like a closing argument. In closing, and maybe I'll put this like caveat on it. Like, I feel like we've been a little bit like intense and almost like a little bit negative, but the title of this thing is still going to be like NAR locked in, the highest, compensation value, like sort of explosively good news, so bring it home for us. Like, tell me again why this is good news.
Yeah. As I often do, let me give you one thing before I give you that thing. In this document, it is the exact text of the settlement from the legal document. A lot of people are doing a lot of things based on NAR's summary or their brokerage's summary or something they heard from someone else. I want you to know the exact wording of the exact settlement document. Again, not approved yet, but I've included highlighted sections, really almost the entire section that talks about the changes that we need to make. The rest of it is legal jargon. You should go find the whole thing. But I've given you the highlighted sections that I believe are most relevant. I've done that work for you and selected it, and I'm showing it to you so that you know what I'm actually responding to. And then I do give you really a mini article on how NAR just locked in higher compensation for higher value agents. Again, when I say higher value agent, I mean an agent that has more value to provide to the consumer, an agent that delivers more value to the consumer, not your average everyday, do the same, charge the same, look the same, act the same. This is for people that are really committed to being a world-class professional who has massive positive impact on their clients' lives. Now, that being said, imagine a few scenarios here where your potential seller or your potential buyer is much more willing to listen to A, how you're different, B, what you charge, why you charge it, what you do with that commission, that money, that revenue, that income, those resources, what your track record is of bringing buyers to sellers or sellers to buyers, of getting over the average price, under the average time. By the way, that's one of our primary marketing messages, of helping buyers get more value for their dollar, access to more properties. In the past, oftentimes you had to beg to get a prospect on the phone or in the office or on Zoom. More and more and more, there will be the expectation of that conversation. President Biden said last week or a couple weeks back that for the first time ever, real estate agents have agreed to make their fees negotiable. Well, that is both wildly factually inaccurate and dumb. But the reason I share that right now is the fact that he said it is going to impact consumers. And he's not the only one saying it. CNN, NBC, The Daily, it's everywhere. The fact that it's wrong almost doesn't matter. It's priming our prospective client base, our audience, our lead pool, our market areas to ask these questions. Now, the way we got there is really annoying. The fact that we're there is going to be awesome. So now you have someone that's willing to listen. What do you do? How are you different? What do you charge? Why do you charge it? Now, they might also be saying, I'm not going to pay that. But I've been told that thousands of times. And most of those times, by the end of a quick conversation, because I was prepared with the communication of value, people have said, wow, I've never heard of that before. If you can do that, I would gladly pay this. You might not have to work on a contingency fee anymore. That's basically what most of us do. Percentage or fee at closing once results are delivered. You might get a retainer up front. A lot of other industries that provide a lot of services do. So there's this whole new world, this incredibly exciting new world of how do I get compensated? I set my value, my fees based on that, and the consumer's open to talking about it. Now imagine this other thing. I don't want to give you just that. Imagine this. You're right. You're right. All the scary stuff is true. 9 out of 10 agents are now willing to do it cheaper. So you get an opportunity to talk to the client and they're like, I've met with 5 agents. The other 4 were all willing to do it for beep, fill in the blank with something really low. And you're like, hey, totally understand. And it may be wise for you to go with one of them. Now, my value is so different from them. It used to be maybe felt like it's the same but slightly different fee, or I was a little bit better. Now, I'm so far and away different from them that even if my fee is also so far and away different than them, it's like, wow, maybe that's worth considering. Now, maybe a vast majority of people aren't going to consider you. Great. You don't need to work with all those people. If you can lead generate with a platform like Real Geeks or something else, or ads or network or whatever, well enough to talk to enough people that would consider that, they're going to see you even more differentiated than ever, way above the norm, way more valuable, and may strongly consider, in the majority, gladly hiring you, paying your fee, writing a review, telling their friends, and more great clients will attract more great clients, and great fees may lead to more great fees, higher net profitability, less grind, less frustration, less beatings, less clients that doubt your value. I'm not saying it will be perfect and easy. I'm saying there may be more opportunity. And then finally, I'll say this. I've been doing this for over 15 years. I already know all of this will work. I've done it through multiple market cycles, multiple disruptive innovation, billion-dollar tech investments, rules changes, legal changes, political changes, seasonal changes, weather changes, all these things. I'm telling you, I can't be positive because I've never lived through this, but I'm telling you, this has been totally doable without this. And I'm pretty good at paying attention to things like this. I think that if you're willing to add the value and communicate your value, you're about to have a heyday. This is what we've been coaching people on for 12 plus years. And Chris, you and I have talked about this. We have not built the world's largest coaching company because we don't want to sell what we do based on some sexy headline. Ours has been create value and communicate it. It's not 10x your profit, bro. It's not I did it one way, come learn my one way. It's you should build a business based on your unique value to support the life of value and income and impact that you want to live. I have never seen a bigger opportunity for our way of thinking than this market, and I'm trying to share as much of it with you as I can right now.
Okay, Todd, I got one more question for you, but this is the point where you plug yourself.
Okay. Let me do this in the most awkward way possible. We are not the right coaching group for most people. So there's a very good chance you don't want to coach with us, or if you're in DFW, join our team. The reason is we are so brutally committed to everything I just said. If you don't want to be full-time, if you don't want to be fully committed to truly differentiating and offering world-class value to the client, and you're not committed to living an amazing life that requires you to build a disciplined, legitimate, well-packaged business built on incredible value to the client, then you're going to hate coaching with us. You're going to hate being on our team. You're going to love doing a deal with us on the other side. But if those things are ringing your bell and you're like, if I finally found someone speaking my language, or that's what I want to do, then I will say with confidence, I don't know anybody else in our industry that has the value that we have, that's done it as long as we have, that's been so singularly obsessed with value to the client, communication of that value, charging what you're worth, that's built out online courses that have been established and proven for years and years and years, that has clients as amazing as Therese Sebastian, who's been through our program and living an incredible life and with a wonderful business. And I'm not taking credit for all of her success. Please hear me say that. But that is desperately passionate to get in rooms and mastermind and grow together and give you all we've got and learn from you. So if that's exciting, then by all means, Google my name, Todd Tramonte, go to realestategrowthsystems.com, whatever.
There'll be links down below, everyone. Yeah, I'm sure on the form, the download form, there'll be a checkbox. It's like, talk to Todd. Okay, so last question. We've been doing this in the last couple episodes, and I think it's pretty fun because we find out basically who's listened to the end, right? Hey, who's still here, right? So here's the question, right, for you, Todd. And it's actually pose a question to the audience that you want them to answer in the comments. What do you want to know after they've listened to all this?
Okay. I can only do one. What would make you love your career again?
That's awesome.
And the reason for that question, if I have a minute to explain it, is I'm seeing a yes, so I'll go ahead until you stop me. A lot of people aren't loving it anymore. COVID was rough. Increased interest rates have been rough. Low overall market activity is rough. For a lot of people, the first foray into a buyer's market or a stable flat market or a low inventory market has been really annoying and not fun. And you've been lying to people when they say, how's real estate? Oh, it's great. I love it. And you really haven't. And I don't mean you're a liar. I just mean you've been struggling with how you answer that because
what we call cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, it's been frustrating. It's been annoying. It's been bringing you to the point of potential burnout. And I would ask you, what would it take for you to love it again?
All right. I love that. I'm looking forward to seeing the comments down below. Todd, this has been excellent. If you guys are still with us, I hope you're still with us. Hit that like button, subscribe. Definitely go get the downloads. It's great stuff in there. And then we do read all the comments. So if you guys are engaging with us down there, we read it. We don't necessarily a lot of times I hit that heart button, it's like, hi, I saw it, or the thumbs up, depending on what platform it's on, but definitely come say hi. All right. Todd, I think we're done here. Talk to you later.
I think so. Appreciate it, buddy. I'll see you on the next one.